think it's fascinating. I think that, so what I think is that we are entering, I mean, let me just frame this from a bigger picture, because this is a small part of a bigger picture, right? So we are entering a time when we are starting as humans to recognize we don't have the control that we thought we had over everything. I mean, I think humans got into this not very humble, sort of grandiose place where we were like, yeah, we got it all under control. We can make anything happen. We can do all the things. And I think what we are learning, I mean, my background's in cognitive neuroscience. I think a lot about how human beings think and the sort of mistakes we make. And one of the mistakes we can make is, because I think I understand this, everything I think today is true. My model of the world is true. And it ends up making us get very confused when something shows up that doesn't fit our model of the world. And so we already know the federal government has said, frankly, we've been looking at UAPs for decades. We haven't been telling you. Now we're telling you. There are things that we don't understand. We are investigating them. And there's lots of organizations like the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, the UAP Disclosure Fund, the Galileo Project, that are made of people, all political persuasions, all scientific knowledge persuasions, trying to get rigorous information themselves, not necessarily waiting on the federal government, about what's going on in our skies, what's going on in our waters, and actually trying to get international cooperation around these things. Because, like this, for instance, the sphere in Colombia, it's in a different country. So what are the rules about how we deal with something that's interesting that's found there? Having said all that, the sphere itself seems like kind of like an art project of a human.
There's certainly something going to happen in 2027, and I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I've also heard 2034, and I've also heard other dates, much later. But depends who you talk to. Some people say it's a pole reversal. Some people say it's an asteroid hitting the planet. Some people say it's AI reaching quantum, and then all of a sudden we lose the capacity to have control of our own computer systems. I have no idea. What I am aware of is that everybody's telling me we're on borrowed time. And I cannot begin to emphasize how serious a look I get when I say to people who are confiding in me, what's the timescale on this? And they're urging me to be urgent. They're saying to me, people need the right to know this. They have a right to know this. And I'm going, well, what are we talking about? And I feel like shaking these people and saying, for God's sake, just bloody tell me. And they are all constrained by their national security oaths. They want the public to know this.
Welcome back, everyone. You've probably seen some of the mysterious videos, unidentified objects appearing to zoom through the sky, defying physics. We're talking, of course, about UFOs, or as the government calls them, unidentified anomalous phenomena. President Trump took office vowing radical transparency across the board, and that has UFO investigators hoping the government will be more forthcoming about any secret information related to potential non-human intelligence and advanced threats. So what do we know right now, and are we any closer to solving hundreds of cases that have captivated public interest and fueled conspiracy theories for years? In tonight's Prime Focus, our Devin Dwyer took those questions to the Pentagon's top UFO investigator.
How will you know when you're looking at something that could be extraterrestrial life or non-human intelligence?
I think it's going to require a lot more than the blurry videos that I have right now.
The videos have fueled our fascination.
It's a potential problem, a national security problem, a safety of flight issue.
Potential non-human intelligence.
Perhaps.
John Kozlowski is the top U.S. official tasked with investigating UAPs.
You've been solving problems for years in your career. Are these some of the toughest problems you've had to tackle as a scientist?
They are.
Kozlowski leads the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, created by Congress 3 years ago to detect, identify, and attribute mysterious objects of interest in the air, in outer space, and even underwater. Now the office answers to President Trump.
How much of a priority is this work for President Trump and Secretary Hegseth?
No new directives, but lots of support. We seem to have the full support of the administration.
Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on there?
So many people ask me that question.
The commander-in-chief has been a UFO skeptic.
It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer.
But Trump has also hinted that the government may know more than it's letting on.
I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting. But Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
The president is now vowing unprecedented transparency in his second term, giving UFO enthusiasts across the political spectrum hope for fresh answers about those mysteries. Kozlowski has accelerated the release of intensive investigations, a team of several dozen experts poring over video clips, radar data, eyewitness accounts, and deploying mathematical analyses to determine the most likely explanation for each UAP.
Obviously, that is an interesting anomaly.
One of the most recent resolutions, this object spotted by a U.S. military drone, seeming to fly through the hot exploding ash of Mount Etna as it erupted in 2018. No known technology is capable of flying in those conditions.
And what is it, do we think?
It looks like it's probably a 1 foot wide balloon. Yeah,
balloon?
floating with the wind. Yeah.
Like a birthday balloon?
Yeah, could be.
This object, racing across Puerto Rico in 2013, mesmerized investigators for years. Watch as it appears to split into two, then dip into the water before disappearing out of sight.
With very careful analysis of the metadata, taking into account where the camera was pointing, we were able to assess that this is actually an object that is flying just a few hundred feet above the ground and is maintaining a flight path consistent with the wind over the airport the whole time.
So it doesn't actually dip into the water, it's a mirage.
Exactly, yep. It's just an artifact of the sensor.
Most of the cases are readily explainable, Kozlowski says. Large birds, balloons, debris, or drones.
Is your goal to resolve every case that comes in?
So our hope is to be able to triage them, identify those that have the best scientific data, the nexus with national security interests, and the true anomalies behind them, and focus our attention on those really anomalous cases.
How many ballpark are in that category right now?
It's several dozen, but it's a couple percent of the overall.
One unexplained anomaly is the so-called Tic Tac incident of 2004.
Really no idea what that might be.
Navy F-18 pilot David Fravor spotted the object off the California coast, seeming to move at impossible speeds. He spoke with ABC News in 2017.
We're in a clockwise flow going from 12 to 3, and it starts going from 6 to 9. And it's coming up, and we're going down. We start to cut across. It rapidly accelerates, climbs past our altitude, and disappears. That's the last we saw of it.
Any progress?
Not much. There's not a lot of scientific data available.
Is there a procedure for making it public if you think you've actually found it? Non-human intelligence?
So there's no precedence for that, obviously, but I think that we would take that up through the Secretary of Defense and allow him to make that decision.
Critics of the Pentagon effort say it has been hobbled by staffing shortfalls, bogged down by bureaucratic confusion, and mired in excessive secrecy. Whistleblowers testifying before Congress have claimed the government is still hiding evidence of non-human intelligence.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Lawmakers from both parties have proposed legislation to force federal agencies to disclose more information, but Congress has yet to pass it.
When you have only certain information that's shared with the American people, that's when conspiracy theories happen. And it's in my opinion that conspiracy theories can be detrimental.
The issue is when we mix secrecy with a stigma, and that we create such a stigma around a phenomenon that it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for agencies, for academics for people to look at the issue seriously.
Mike Gold is a former associate NASA administrator who served on the agency's UAP independent study team. He's now part of a group of scientific and national security experts pushing for greater transparency.
I have high hopes for this administration, not only because of what the president said, but Tulsi Gabbard, our DNI, explicitly mentioned UAP in her congressional hearing. That helps push back against the stigma.
Should the president, with the stroke of his pen, do what he did with the JFK files and declassify anything related to UAP?
I would applaud an executive order to declassify information relative to UAP.
Having said all that, the sphere itself seems like kind of like an art project of a human. The sort of argument is that they show a video floating above the town of a sphere. Now, spheres or balls have round shapes, have been maybe the majority of shapes in terms that have been reported since the 1940s of UFOs. So that's pretty common, are these round things, right? If you look back at Project Sign, SIGN, you can learn more about that. But there's no connection that's made between the thing that was floating and then the sphere that was found, right? So you have to be kind of careful about making conclusions. It looks to me like a really cool art project that it reminds me of remember those obelisks of like smooth metal that were showing up in the desert in the US? Totally, I mean, could be the same artist. But it just opens up all these questions. So there's a truck going by. But it opens up all these questions, like, if an artist is doing this, why is that? Well, I think it's partly the same reason. It's because we're learning that we don't understand what's in our skies, what's in our waters, and there's something going on that's essentially bigger than us, right? And this thing that's bigger than us brings us up. Like artists' jobs, their job is to bring us up into self-transcendence, just to stop, I mean, in my view, to stop us from thinking that we're all the be-all, end-all, and there's nothing else. And kind of, it feels like this is an effort to bring us up. Now, whether that effort is an effort of human, I think it's a human intelligence that did this, but who knows? It needs to be more carefully investigated, obviously, than it has been. But it could also be non-human. It could be artificial intelligence. There could be all sorts of ways to look at this.